Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. This is the first video I've done in quite a while. So in this video I'm going to be doing one of two Socket 775 Core2 Quad builds. So I'll just start off with the parts right away here. Like I said, this one's going to be a Core2 Quad. This is the Q9500. It's going to have 4 gigs of RAM and a Radeon HD 5770 in this Gigabyte board. I use this board for most of my Core2 Quad builds. And this one is kind of a more permanent build, whereas my other ones I would take apart pretty quickly after I built them. So I'll start by installing the processor. We've all seen this done before, I'm sure. It's a Core2 Quad Q9500, like I said. Just gonna carefully drop it in there. And then of course the cooler is going to be the cooler from the Inspiron 530. I use that cooler all the time. Then a bit of thermal compound, and this is the HY710 stuff I got last summer. I have probably used maybe 1/15 of that tube so far, so it is going to last me a very long time. And this is actually the second time I've installed this cooler today, because the first time I had some of this thermal surface purifier still on the cooler and I forgot to take it off. And right after I installed it, I remembered that, like I said, I forgot to take it off, and that was kind of fun to clean up. Luckily the board didn't get damaged. That's the most kind of hard to repair part. CPU didn't get any damage really either, other than, you know, I had to clean up some thermal compound on the bottom. And I actually did a test. It looks like that thermal compound I use has metal in it, but it's not conductive at all. So it actually is, you know, not the end of the world if I get that on anything. And then RAM, I don't think I talked about the RAM actually. I'm going with 4 gigs of DDR3. I have dual 2 gig modules here. I think this memory works, but if the system doesn't post, then I'm just going to swap out the RAM, because half of my RAM is dead at this point. The case I'll be using is this generic no-name one. I got this, actually my mom got this from our local library when they were reselling or recycling their PCs. They had a bunch of old library computers just sitting there for, I think my mom said they were 10 bucks each, and she got 2 of them for me. And I think she may have gotten a monitor for me as well. That was almost 2 years ago when she got those. So one of those systems, the case, is actually used in my friend Josh's build. I was actually going to do a video about that, but I kind of forgot. This case, actually, one of the side panels is bent, so I have to repair that before I install it. And it did have a window, but I decided that, well actually I took the window out for another build I was doing where I was doing a custom wooden case that ended up falling through, whatever. And so I'm probably just going to take foam core and replace the window with that, and then have 2 cutouts for some 120 or 140 millimeter fans. I'm not sure which I'm going to do though. So yeah, I have to find screws for the board now so I can screw it in. So at my old school, I would take apart these little HP computers, and they had these really cool Torx kind of, there's, 632 machine screws, but they have Torx heads. And I actually have started using them, because I probably got a couple hundred of them over the course of me being at that school. And I've been using them in computer builds just for like security purposes, so people can't easily open my computers. Not that anyone in my family really would. So it took me all of like half an hour to find the I/O shield. That actually ended up being in another case, and I thought it was in my bag of I/O shields, and that bag of I/O shields just randomly went missing. So yeah, I never ended up finding that either. Luckily, my other Socket 775 build that I'm doing later has a I/O shield that's not in that bag either. I found one of them for that board, so that's good. So installing the board, you know, typical stuff going on here. And then I need to find the right Torx bit for these screws. So I'm going to flip this back up here with the motherboard fully installed. I believe this is one of the first builds I've done where the board has all 9 screws in it. Something that's actually pretty nice about this board is on this case, my friend's one of these cases doesn't, it actually has 2 of these, but you can see we have a kind of 3-pin power LED, and this board actually has a specific, I think it says, I don't know what it says down there, I can't really read that, but this 3-pin header here is specifically designed for cases with 3-pin power button things, because for some reason they decided to put it in a 3-pin connector back in the day, I guess. Once again, sorry for the kind of bad lighting. That is something I'm working on. So it looks like that card's not going to fit at all, go figure. So I have to pop out this bracket here because this case doesn't have, you know, removable things. It just has these metal plates that stick in. So with this case, yeah, see that's not gonna, this 5770 isn't gonna fit because I have this drive cage in the front. And if you're wondering why I'm using a 5770 in this build, it's because these actually work with Windows. I figured out, just tried one just to do it, and Windows boots up no problem with these installed. So I'm going to see if I can remove this because I don't want to, you know, take out the heatsink or take off the heatsink for the memory, because that's what this little thing here is. Of course, this came out of a Mac Pro, so it has this, that's why that's there. So yeah, in theory. I mean, hopefully there aren't any RAM chips under here. There probably are, and I mean, if this has like thermal pads on it, then I, you know, won't remove it, but if it doesn't, then it might not be the end of the world to take this part off. And it looks like I have to take the entire cooler off to get to that part. Yeah, see, this is what I was worried about. You see, there are thermal pads on this plate here, and there's RAM chips on the back of this video card. So, you know, what that means is I can't really run this card without that part. I'm gonna see if maybe I have some like Raspberry Pi heat sinks laying around, because those would just, you know, fit on there and probably do a better job. And I actually remembered to pan the camera up, kind of a bit late though. So I will be just putting this one screw in here. So let's take a look at the PCIe cards I'll be installing. Because this is going to be a test PC, and it's my high-end test PC, I'm going to be putting a dual NIC card in it. I got this for another project back in the day. That project ended up falling through. And one of the ports runs at 10100, and that might just because I don't have drivers installed for it, or I didn't have drivers installed at the time on that system. Hopefully it's not like a broken card, because this is certainly out of warranty. And the last card I'll be installing is this capture card. It's a DVI capture card that I won in Louis Rossman's giveaway last year. So you probably won't be able to see, nor will I. This is at a really bad angle, but I'm just gonna kind of slot that into that slot. And then I'll be installing this with a security screw because I couldn't find any more 632 screws, and it would have driven my OCD crazy to have one of these cards not be 632. I'm also going to grab a PCIe thing plate quickly. So I actually found a fairly nice one. I'll be putting that in this slot here with more of these security screws, even though it's probably going to be a pain later on. I know I'm going to regret installing them this way, but whatever. I only have these screws at this point. I am not really sure where my 632 Phillips screws went, and I'll also be just throwing 632 screws in these bottom slots just so I have some left over in this computer, as that one tries to run away from me. So I have a nicely filled up back panel. That looks really nice. And then what's next? Probably the power supply would be a good thing to do next. So the power supply will be this one from Raidmax. It's a 500 watt. Certainly good enough for the system. I'll just slot that in the top there and start threading in these screws. And I left my screwdriver in the other room. Alright, there's the power supply installed. Cable management's going to be fun. I actually wanted to get that in there just before I start installing other things like the hard drives. As I drop a bunch of screws everywhere. Hey, even less 632 screws now. So I'll be installing an SSD, one of the 512s from MacBook Pros, and a 1 terabyte drive. So here is the 1 terabyte, and this is going to go in the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and start using my 632 screws because that bag of Torx screws is empty. So I'm just going to screw in a couple of them here. Alright, so the SSD here, like I said, 512 from the MacBook Pro, I have to figure out how it's going to be orientated in the computer because I'm using this adapter. And it looks like it wants to go that way, so, you know, lucky guess. I should have inferred by the way those connectors were, or that cutout was arranged. So it's going to go this way. As for the operating system, I'm going to be going with a Windows 7 Pro and Ubuntu 1804 dual boot on this system. And that will, you know, allow me to test Windows and Linux things. So I only have 3 screws for this also, but you know, it's an SSD. It's not going anywhere. It'll be fine. And then I'll just slide it in there and go over to my bag of screws and look for more 632 screws. And funnily enough, I actually found the 4th screw for the SSD. Just, you know, I saw it there. Alright, there we go. My storage media is installed, and somehow this little tiny screw turned up. That's probably from the 5770. Looks like it. So let's see what the SATA configuration is going to be. I kind of want to put an optical drive in the system, though I have one that is external and it's USB 2, so that's, you know, fine, I guess. And then I'll just kind of come together in this rat's nest up here. They're not really organized from the power supply. So I'll just go ahead and plug in my power supply. That's going to get tied up back there. And then it doesn't... Actually, yeah, these are keyed. These CPU connectors are keyed. But it actually... Yeah, it matters which way they go. Where's the square one? It is this one. And that part plugs in back there, and if the computer blows up, so be it. I'm just going to kind of thread these cables so that one is behind everything. And this is the problem. The cables are not, like, bundled inside the power supply, like with a lot of other power supplies. This one, all of the cables are just kind of like, you know, all of the different wires come together outside the power supply here, and it's quite obnoxious because, you know, I can't, like you saw, I tried to loop this cable through these ones, but it just got tangled in more of them because of, you know. So I think like this should be what I'm going for, and then I need the one with square pins on it that plugs in there. So our SATA cables are of course in the wrong orientation, right? Those face up, I need them to face down, so it's going to look like this, and it's going to be all ugly. But, you know, that's what PC building is. It's just, you know, things like that going wrong. So there's that, and then that one goes to the SSD. And then the only thing we have left to install, or to plug in rather, is our video card, which only takes a single 6-pin, which is nice. And the power supply, the auxiliary power on this video card is really hard to find, but I think I have it, at least kind of. There we go. There's that plugged in as well. This will also get looped behind that. And then the rest of these, I'm just going to deal with these later when I do the cable management off camera. So I believe that is it. Also, actually, I'm going to be installing this thing here, SD card reader thing. Not that I really need it, but, you know, would be handy to have in there. There we go. Even though it doesn't fit, the screw holes don't line up with anything on the case, so, you know, that's fun. But whatever. So I'm going to do the cable management off camera like I said, so I will continue filming once that is finished. Alright, so the build is finished. I added a rear fan, and this intakes from the back, and I also added a front fan that is mounted in a foam thing and duct tape to the case. And those both intake, and then the power supply and the rest of like the random venting around the case will be the exhaust. I did the cable management, which actually turned out really nice for this build. And yeah, I think that's it. So if we go around to the back and switch on the power supply, let's go ahead and see what happens. Fans both start up. CPU fan is running. Waiting for those lights to go away because that means we have a host. Video card fan's running. Nice color scheme going on there. Looks a lot better on camera, or off camera. Looks like it rebooted. Suppose it would be nice to have a monitor plugged in. The moment I turned off the camera, those lights went off. So I believe the system has indeed posted. So yeah, that's cool. It seems to be working. Alright, so I actually plugged in a monitor this time. Let's go ahead and get the switch on the back. And sit back and see what happens. Actually, I should probably put the phone in the tripod, so it's not shaky and, you know, disgusting. There we go. We have a video output, but it's too dark. Let me turn off the light. Looks like maybe our clock battery died. You can see there we have the splash screen, which is normal. Actually, no, what's normal is those like distorted parts on the monitor. That's the monitor, not the computer. You can see the 5770 is working though, that's great. And the video memory chips on the back don't seem to be getting that hot. So it's just kind of chilling here. Maybe it doesn't see the hard drives and that's why it's not doing anything, I don't know. But the good thing is the memory works, processor works, video card works, all of that is working. With that said, I'm going to continue the video once I get these side panels on and all of that. Alright, so I experimented with getting the side panel fixed and put back together. That went, you know, decently well. I still have to use a rubber mallet to kind of hammer it on there, but whatever. And then I realized that I still had to plug in the hard drive cables and install Windows. And from what I hear, if you have two drives in the system, Windows will sometimes install something on the second drive, and so it has to, the computer can't boot without both drives installed. So I always unplug the secondary drives and leave the boot drive plugged in. So, you know, long story short, I get all that set up and I was gonna go to boot it up to install Windows on it. And I got no output from the video card. So I started messing around with the DVI cables and the machine started just reboot looping basically. Still no output. So I hit the reset button actually, and then the machine went on and then just turned off completely right away. So I flicked the switch on the power supply to the off position and then waited a bit, and then I hit the on switch and I think there was a giant spark in the power supply, and now the system doesn't turn on at all. So I'll go ahead and plug it in here once again. Actually, hold on. My monitor is not working either. I don't know what's going on there, because the monitor is plugged into a different thing. This isn't working either. Plugged into that. So it looks like that thing there went down. That plug there is no longer getting power. It doesn't look like anything is tripped in our breaker panel. I'm thinking workshop up here, 20 amp, that's in like the normal position. Workroom GFI, normal anyway. Workroom is the room I'm working in, obviously. And then, yeah, it doesn't, although these switches, these breakers apparently are labeled wrong, but none of them are in the tripped position. I'll actually check this is the main breaker panel, which they all look to be good. So that's very strange. Okay, so a bit of an update. This is a GFI, or a GFCI, ground fault current interrupter or something. I believe that stands for, if you don't know. So I hit the reset button on that. And then I went over here and I flicked this switch, which it's not plugged in, but I think the way GFIs work is that controls like the entire circuit. And these chargers for the drills started right up. So that means the GFI, GFCI, whatever, tripped. And that, you know, kind of makes sense because there was an internal spark in the power supply. So we're back on the tripod, and of course with power supplies like this, the kind of cheapy ones, which I don't hold Raidmax up to the standard of like Corsair and Seasonic. So power supplies like this do tend to spark when you flick that switch. So we're going to try this again here on camera. Sadly, I do have a bunch of high-end hardware that I really like sitting there in the system, right? Plugged into the possibly, you know, broken PSU, right? So yeah, we're gonna hit that switch again with a pencil. And no spark, at least I didn't hear one. Monitor is still on. So let's just try this again. System seems to be going okay, and we have a standard boot. Okay, that was strange. I feel like it's entirely possible that that was just a coincidence, that a couple issues combined, you know, to form that. It seems to be working now, and I think I'll keep that switch in the on position. And of course this is normal. I think I have to swap the clock battery, it might have died or something. This board tends to do that, and, you know, getting a new clock battery or swapping it, you know, or reseating it rather, tends to, you know, help with that issue. So it recognizes the NIC that we added, and then this is where it normally hangs. So yeah, I guess at this point I can get my external optical drive and my Windows 7 installation disk, and we can begin working on this. Right, so I'm getting that same problem again where it is doing that kind of reboot loop thing. It's not doing it as kind of quickly as it was. Basically, it would turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off right away. Now it's turning on, staying on for probably 5-10 seconds, then turning back off. And so, you know, that's after I hit the reset button, which is pretty much the same thing that happened last time. So it's giving me that issue again, so I turned off the power supply, and if last time is anything to go by, this time the power supply should spark, it should trip the GFI, and the monitor should go off and everything. So I'm just going to get that on camera in case it does, using a pencil once again. Okay, so that scared the heck out of me. The optical drive, the external optical drive spins up when USB gets power, which on this board happens all the time. So let's go ahead and turn it on here. And hopefully we get a boot menu or something. It looks, yeah, we have display. I'm hitting F12, and we are going to go from USB CD-ROM. Kind of cool that this motherboard supports, it kind of is like specific for that. Optical drive is loading up, and here we go. We're installing Windows 7 Ultimate 64-bit, and my install disk is a bit scratched up, so hopefully everything works out. I can easily burn a new disk if I want to. Yeah, no, this isn't working as far as I can. Oh, here we go. Never mind. Install now. You can barely see what's going on here. Alright, so we are just about there. It is actually, yeah, it's completing installation here. Just restarted and everything. System seems to be running fine. I think the whole power supply thing was just a coincidence and just, you know, a freak thing. Anyway, I was actually talking to my friend who I was getting the Windows licensing stuff from, and we were kind of discussing Pixie Boot servers. I might add another terabyte to this and then keep all of my Pixie images on there so I can use this as a Pixie server. But, you know, that's for the future, I guess. I'll have to, you know, figure out what I'm doing with that later on. As for the installation, this is my messy work surface. This always happens when I build a computer. As for the installation, it has been going pretty smoothly, although in the last clip, or the last, I don't know when that was, a couple clips ago maybe, it took a long time to get to the actual installation and everything. It said the setup is starting thing for, you know, a good 5 minutes or so. And the copying Windows files took a while to start, and once it started, it got going really fast. Same with expanding the files. I think that's probably because my Windows disk is all scratched up, and it's just taking a while to get everything figured out. And that will, of course, be taken care of once I have a Pixie server. So yeah, there you go. Alright, everything is all set on the computer. First time starting it up with a fresh install. I am definitely going to have to get a new clock battery for it though. Should just go out and buy a couple packs of CR2032s, I think they are. I also need a CR1620 battery for my watch, but that's, you know, beside the point. Windows boots nice and fast off of the SSD. And there we go. So I'll just go ahead and type in my password as well. So yeah, here we go. You can also see it's not really, you know, saving the time, but whatever. So yeah, I am going to go ahead and shut this down and probably take it upstairs and get all of that set up. So yeah. I just realized I forgot to plug in the 1 terabyte hard drive. Here the drive's spinning up. That's good. It's reading something or something. I don't actually know what's on that drive before I format it. I should determine that. So you can see it's not saving any BIOS settings. That will, you know, I'll have to play with that. I want to see if this drive is recognized. There's no reason it shouldn't be. Wow, it actually must be formatted to work in Windows even, because normally I have to go into the disk management or whatever, and oh wait, there's a Windows installation on this drive. That's great. Whatever, that's cool. Floppy drive A. That's strange. I don't have a floppy drive in this computer. It's probably just a Windows or this motherboard thing, but whatever. So on that note, that is this computer pretty much fully working, except for the clock battery. And I have to get the side panel back on somehow, or just make my own custom side panel, which I'm, you know, pretty close to doing anyway. So yeah, with that said, I think that is going to be it for this video. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will try to upload more in the future, and yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.